Can astrology predict when there is going to be an all-time high? This is the part 2 looking at astrology and how it influences market crashes and all-time highs. Now, similarly to the market crashes, if you haven't seen that video, I'll leave the link in the description below. With market crashes, I thought that squares and oppositions and challenging transits would have been the major cause of the crashes, but that was just the opposite. It was the sextiles, the trines, and positive transits that seemed to trigger in financial market all-time highs, whether it's crypto market and financial market. The challenging transits seem to play a large influence in the all-time highs. Squares were the most prevalent within a market all-time high. There was trines and sextiles that were next, but the squares and the challenging transits seemed to be the trigger of creating an all-time high. There's oppositions, there's contraparallels, which is similar to an opposition, parallels, which is similar to a trine or sextile, and other here is planets that were retrograde. The market all-time highs that I looked at was 1929, 73, 87, 2007, 2020, 2021, this was for Bitcoin, 2022, and 2024, which was also for Bitcoin. I also looked at Jupiter, Saturn aspects, Uranus, Saturn aspects, Jupiter, Uranus aspects, Neptune and or Pluto aspects, Mars, and the retrograde planets. So in 1929, Saturn was contraparallel to Jupiter in Gemini at 14 degrees. Gemini at 14 degrees seems to also be very influential in these all-time highs. And there's a reason for that, and I'll go over that in a little bit. In 1929, also Mars was trine to Jupiter in Gemini at 14 degrees, and Uranus was retrograde in Aries at 10 degrees. 1973, Jupiter was in Capricorn, contraparallel to Saturn retrograde in Gemini at 14 degrees. And Jupiter was also square to Uranus, and Saturn was retrograde at Gemini 14 degrees in this year. 1973 was a year that there was an all-time high followed by a crash. Those were two that were very close in proximity in time. 1987, Jupiter was trining to Uranus. Jupiter was also in a trine to Neptune. Mars was trining to Jupiter in Aries at 29 degrees, and the planets that were retrograde were Jupiter, 29 degrees Aries, Uranus retrograde in Sagittarius at 22 degrees, and Neptune retrograde in Capricorn at 5 degrees. 2007, Jupiter was in a square to Uranus, retrograde. Jupiter was also in a sextile to Neptune. Mars was sextile to Saturn, and Uranus was retrograde in Pisces at 15 degrees. 2020, Saturn again was squaring to Uranus. Jupiter was in a sextile to Neptune, both at 17 degrees. Mars was in a trine to Uranus, and Mercury was retrograde in Pisces at 12 degrees. 12 degrees was another degree that came up a lot within these all-time highs. And again, I'll go over that after this. 2021 for Bitcoin, Saturn was in a square to Uranus, retrograde in Taurus at 12 degrees. Jupiter in Aquarius was contraparallel to Uranus at 12 degrees. Mars was squaring to Saturn, and Mars was opposite to Uranus at the 12 degrees, and Uranus was retrograde in Taurus at 12 degrees. In 2022, Saturn was in Aquarius at 12 degrees, squaring to Uranus retrograde in Taurus. Mars in Sagittarius was sextile to Saturn, again at that 12 degrees, and Venus was retrograde and Uranus was retrograde. 2024, this is Bitcoin all-time high. Jupiter was in Gemini at 14 degrees. It was retrograde, squaring to Saturn. Mars was also retrograde opposite to Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius. It was trine to the North Node and parallel to Jupiter. Jupiter was retrograde in Gemini at 14 degrees, and Mars was retrograde in Leo at 5 degrees. Now we can see from this that there was a lot of Saturn-Jupiter squares, Saturn-Uranus squares, Jupiter-Uranus squares that seem to be very influential within these all-time highs. So Saturn-Uranus squares in 73, 2020, 21, 2022 was consistent with high tension and financial crisis years. Jupiter-Uranus interactions, especially the squares and the contraparallels, the challenging transits, occurred in 1929, 73, 2007, and 21. Mars trining Jupiter appeared in 1929, 87, and 2020, all major market movement years. Jupiter, also Saturn in Gemini at the 14 degrees was influential, and other planets at 12 degrees seem to be very influential. So why is that? So before I explain the 14 degrees and the 12 degrees, we need to know some vocabulary. Now, there are planets that are domicile in exaltation, fall, and detriment. That just means a planet in a certain sign, it's how it reacts. In domicile, a planet is its home sign. Rules the best here, it's natural, it's very powerful here. It's exalted, it's strong, it's like being a VIP guest within a certain sign. There's an elevated quality to it. When a planet's in its fall, it struggles to express its energy smoothly, it's uncomfortable, it's weakened, it's being out of its element. And when a planet is in detriment, it's in someone else's house. The planet's natural tendencies may not align well with the energy of the sign. Again, it's uncomfortable. It doesn't act as it usually does. It's weaker here. The decans, or the faces, means the sign is divided into 10 degrees, and within each of these 10 degrees within the zodiac sign, it's broken down and ruled by a specific planet. For Gemini, the first 10 degrees are ruled by Jupiter, the second 10 degrees is ruled by Mars, and the third 10 degrees is ruled by the Sun. And each zodiac sign, each 10 degree increment is ruled by different planets. Terms in astrology, it's when the sign is broken down even further, and they're divided into unequal segments, and each of those segments is ruled by a specific planet as well. It's a little bit confusing, but knowing that will help us to understand what Jupiter and Gemini at 14 degrees is and the other planets in 12 degrees could represent. So Jupiter and Gemini at 14 degrees. The decan is Mars, and the term, when it's broken down even further, is ruled by the planet of Jupiter. So it gives Jupiter this stronger influence of Jupiter fueled by action, aggression. Jupiter is in detriment, meaning it's uncomfortable in the sign of Gemini. It struggles to express itself, to see the bigger vision here. It's overhyped, market euphoria, misinformation, and scattered expansion. Aggression, volatility, competitiveness, impulsive action, and conflict-driven. This could be why it's driving and pushing the price to that all-time high, because it's action-oriented, it's aggressive, pushing the market higher to an all-time high. So it could be a lot of times where there was a market high before a crash. And this is in 1929 and 2024. Breaking down 2029 a little bit further, Saturn was contraparallel to Jupiter at that 14 degrees of Gemini. There was height, speculation, it was unstable growth. With Jupiter having that Mars influence and that Jupiter influence, too optimistic. Again, but Mars influence also giving that aggression and impulsivity, pushing the market financial growth at all costs. The contraparallel was the opposition between reality and overconfidence, leading to a massive crash in October of 1929. 1973, this is when Saturn was in Gemini at 14 degrees. So Saturn here could be signaling the market couldn't stabilize, fractured political economic responses. Jupiter was in its sign of fall, expansion attempts that could have failed, tightened monetary policy, and loss of global confidence. With Mars being influenced to Jupiter, aggressive financial moves led to fast, unsustainable highs, and the contraparallel was a major clash of vision and structure, no real resolution, and created a collapsing point. And this was in 1973. Again, a lot of all-time highs are quickly followed by crashes. Now the 12 degrees, Saturn was at 12 degrees in one of the years, and it was in the decan of Mercury, and the term which is broken down even further within that decan of Mercury. This could be signaling massive trading. Again, over speculation. Uranus was another one that was in 12 degrees. Uranus was with the moon, and Mercury was also other supporting energies for this. And when Mercury was retrograde at 12 degrees, Jupiter was very influential to this. So with the squares, from the many squares that occurred within these years, I feel that could be the over speculation, overbuying, pressure to buy more, hype from the media, possible financial confusion, even political confusion and aggressiveness, especially by Mars, because there was many Mars transits here that fueled and pushed the market up over the edge. The retrograde planets, I also did not think that there would be many retrograde planets going over, re-evaluating. That could have also been a signal of market confusion. Market confusion influenced by this market hype and other political issues going on within the world, causing people to want to buy, want to get in, not to miss out as the market was reaching its all-time high. And that confusion also could have fueled a crash followed by these all-time highs. Something else to consider is within these all-time highs is market manipulation and geopolitical tensions and other unusual events occurring during these times, fueling this speculation, fueling this fear of missing out, having to get in right now, creating this chaos and greed. Greed could be a huge part of all of this market all-time highs. The biggest thing to take away from market high, all-time highs and crashes, it's not always what it seems to be. The challenging aspects seemed to fuel the all-time highs, making the market more aggressive. And in the crashes, the sextiles, the trines, leading to these bubbles bursting. That begs the question, do positive transits always cause the markets to fall? And do challenging transits always cause the markets to move higher? So this has made me look at analyzing the astrology in a completely different way, which is good. It forced me to learn new things that I feel will be very beneficial in future market analyses. I will leave links to this slideshow so you guys can take a look at it and possibly see something that I might have missed. With the all-time highs, I did not see as many 1822 degrees, which are those critical degrees. I did see some 0 and 29 degrees during these all-time highs, but not as much as in the crashes. But if you would like to know more about crypto astrology, I do have a Patreon where I write a report every month detailing each day the transits and how they could influence the crypto market. I do personal readings, whether personal astrology readings, whether you want to know just about your personal life and things going on, or about trading. I have free 15-minute consultations where we can talk about what you're looking for, how I could be of help and service to you. Link is in the description below. Like, subscribe, and share.